All right, in this video I might answer some of your questions as to why paint jobs on your car are so much more expensive than they were compared to the 70s and 80s. Let's talk about this. Well, actually, we'll take it back to the 60s, because in the 60s and 70s there was basically two paints that you could get for your car. There was enamel and there was lacquer. Then came out in the early 80s a base coat, clear coat paint job, and it was available also in the European cars in even the 70s, and it was far superior looking to the single stage paints that the automotive manufacturers used in the American cars. Prior to the 60s, there was basically lacquer and enamel, and to do a really nice paint job back then, make it really shiny, the only thing you could really use was lacquer paint, and it was super labor intensive. And to get a good lacquer paint job, if you wanted that real high gloss, it was really expensive, and not many people did it even then. But what happened is when that base coat clear coat came out, people got spoiled and they wanted that on everything. So in the early days there was Earl Scheib, One Day, Maaco, all these cheap places that you could get your car painted, and there was a lot less regulation. There was no VOC laws like they had back then, so those places could operate and do paint jobs really cheap, and they could get cheap labor, and you could get a paint job, for Earl Scheib, remember, $99.95, remember $109.95 in those years. Back in the 60s and 70s, it was $29.95. And back then, people had different standards. I remember I worked at Earl Scheib for a week. I needed a job, and they were hiring, and so I was like jumping on the bandwagon to work there because I just wanted some money. And basically, when somebody came in, the guy would just say to them, hey, listen, if you want a really nice job, you need to go up the street. If you just want a paint job, this is Earl Scheib, it's cheap, and this is what you get. And that's when you came to pick up your car, is exactly what he'd say. Oh, you'd say, hey, what about that spot over there? And he'd say, hey, this is Earl Scheib. We don't do that here. So then come the good old lawsuits. People started going in and they'd say, hey, I want you to paint my car again. Well, what happens when you start doing that? You start going in and you'd be expecting the moon, and you're getting a lot less than that, and you're only paying 10 cents on the dollar. Well, people just started expecting more and more out of their money. So just remember, life isn't free, neither is labor, neither is materials. And people start wanting more and more for their money, guess what happens? Everybody's got to raise the price. So with those expectations being raised up, you get one guy would say, hey, I'm going to do this. Another guy would say, hey, I'm going to do this. And next guy would say, hey, I want you to do this. Next guy would say, I want you to do this. Well, all of a sudden the standards got up real higher, so the price went up with it. Along with places like California making these good old VOC regulations, paint started to go up like crazy too. So I remember buying a gallon of synthetic enamel, not compliant anymore, but back then it was. And that's what all those places used at Earl Scheib, and all those uses synthetic enamel, and One Day in Maaco, I'll use synthetic enamel. And you get a gallon of that for $20. Yeah, it didn't last very long, but nobody expected much, because what was happening is your paint job in your car would only last 5 or 6 years before that. So people didn't expect the paint job that they got the second time to last more than a couple more years. They were going to get rid of the car. So along with those benchmark standards going up, the paint prices going up, the VOC regulations going down, which makes basically the price go up, and people walking in there going, hey, I see a little wave right here, can you go ahead and fix that for me? Cha-ching, there goes labor price. What do you think's going to happen? People just going to start working for free? Somebody else going to pay for their groceries? No. Price of paint jobs goes up. On your classic cars, everybody says, before, it was okay. You put a little filler in there, fix it really good, no problem. Nowadays, people, oh no, I need that butt welded in and grind it off perfect. And, they have all these completely different expectations on a restoration. Well, I want that really shiny clear. I want the one where it's really got the deep look. Cha-ching. There goes the price. Because to do that, it takes a lot more labor and a lot more material. Along with that, you got places like California going, oh boy, we're making paint emissions. We better clean this up. Just like they did with catalytic converters. They converted carbon monoxide into carbon dioxide. What's the problem with climate change? Carbon dioxide. Too much carbon dioxide in the air. They converted it and caused this big problem. Bet you didn't know that about catalytic converters. They convert and make climate change. So now everybody's got their hand in the pot. The paint's got to have to cost more to make it put on less emissions. They've done this nationally now, raised the standards on everything. People have raised the standards on the quality of work. People don't expect the same things they used to. Back in the old days, this would have been a really amazing paint job. Today, it's crap. People would say, oh, this is no good. Oh, no, I got to have those little waves out. I got to have that thing shinier. I've got to have, smoother stuff. I've got to have, you can't miss any dents. You got to fix everything. Well, I got news for you guys. There's no magic to this stuff. It's a lot of labor. And when you start getting pickier, it's a lot more labor. So now you know. That's why paint jobs were $100 back in the 80s, and plus we've got inflation and all the other stuff, and that's why they're 10 grand today. 10 grand. Yeah, you can get a cheap paint job. There's places out there like Mako and stuff like that still. You're going to spend about 2 grand. But you know what? The reason, and I don't know how much longer they're going to be in business, because when they got this kind of stuff where people start coming in, like I was talking to a guy, and he was proud to tell me he took his VW bus to Mako. And you know what he said to me? He goes, well, you got to get after him. And I said, what do you mean? He says, that's the 3rd time they painted, or 4th time they painted that bus. Well, thanks, bud. The price just went up again. Well, so now you know the mystery, guys. The price of paint, the cost of labor, and the most important thing is people have jacked up this whole business. It made it so painters don't make any money, and also so that people pay a ton for it. I'll talk to you guys in the next video. Hope you like this one. Please like, share, and subscribe.